Hello, my name is Minerva Wu. I'm a fourth-year PhD student at the University of California, Irvine, and I'm part of a team evaluating the NASEF esports program, and we'll be talking about the phenomenon of tilt in games. I'll talk about where this term came from, the common responses and causes of tilt in NASEF students. So tilt is a term originated from pinball, where frustrated players would hit the machine, the pinball machine would flash tilt at the top, and the game would end because there's nothing else they could do. This term was later adopted to poker, where they would use it as an explanation for why poker players would continue to play even when they were losing and actually make worse decisions. Traditional sports would carry on this meaning of tilt by associating it primarily with poor decision-making when gambling or betting. As adapted to esports then, tilt is associated with frustration and rage and negative emotions that in turn starts to negatively impact decision-making and gameplay. Some definitions emphasize repeated failures, losing streaks, or the feeling of frustration when a player has tried really hard but just doesn't seem to get any results. In general, tilt is when a player lets their emotions get in the way of making whatever the best play or decision is at a particular point in time. So we as researchers were interested in tilt because tilt represents an opportunity for social-emotional learning. Social-emotional learning refers to a wide array of skills that are relating to managing oneself and emotions, as well as interacting and cooperating with other people. We surveyed students in the NASEF program and found that the program had a positive impact on students' attitudes in social-emotional skills such as self-management, grit, and perseverance. While emotional regulation went down in surveys, interviews indicated that this was because players were actually becoming more aware of their own tilt and behaviors when tilted. Thus, managing tilt goes hand in hand with social-emotional learning because tilt harms gameplay. Preventing or getting better at dealing with tilt is part of learning to play better. So we surveyed students and coaches on how they reacted when tilted. A third of responses involved exiting the game. This is a widely recommended strategy online for dealing with tilt. It's not rage quitting or quitting in the middle of a game, but stopping after a game and taking a break, maybe getting a snack or playing a different game. The idea was to return to the game with a fresh mind. A quarter of players, though, had positive reactions to tilt, where they actively tried to do something in-game to improve their emotions. They take deep breaths, try to calm down, and try to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it without blaming anyone. Another quarter of players had negative reactions. This was the highly dramatized image where a player might scream or slam the keyboard or lash out at other people and say rude things or try to intentionally do poorly in-game. Finally, almost a fifth of players just did nothing, or as we called it, lump. In interviews with coaches, lumping was called the sneakier side of tilt, where instead of getting really worked up, players would just stop communicating. They didn't lash out, but they didn't try to fix the situation and would basically shut down and give up on the game. So then, what causes tilt? Most of the players were in some way triggered by other players, whether they're teammates, their opponents, whether it was someone doing poorly or someone saying something, or someone just not going according to plan. Students were also really hard on themselves and got frustrated when they felt like they made a mistake or if they felt like they weren't playing as well or just doing as well as they knew they could. Losing games and losing streaks were triggers as well, and sometimes players would just get frustrated by the game or computer issues like specific mechanics or lag. We also looked at how the cause or the trigger affected how players responded to tilt. When other players were the cause, players had a whole mix of responses, like such as the four that we talked about before. But primarily, they responded positively and tried to calm down and recollect themselves. When players were frustrated by themselves or by losing, though, they were split between negative responses and exit responses primarily. Finally, 2/3 of the students and all of the coaches that we surveyed thought it was possible to change how easily someone got tilted. Players who thought it was possible to change were more likely to respond with positive or exit strategies when tilted, while players who thought it wasn't possible were more likely to be negative. In the teams at NASEF, coaches had a few strategies for managing tilt. For example, they would encourage players to always be communicating and to be aware of how their reactions could affect their team. They also worked on changing individuals' attitudes from winning to concrete, specific, immediate goals that they could do to improve. If you're interested in learning more, please check out our work at connectedlearning.uci.edu. Thank you.